There's been a lot of discussion. It's been exciting actually to see, last year there was increased talk around attracting diverse talent. Now the conversation is really on how do you retain diverse talent? And that's the real litmus test, because that really is an indication of whether or not you've actually changed the culture internally.
Joining me today is Kelly Worden, Vice President, ESG and Investing for Health with the International Wellbeing Institute. Kelly, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Can you start by telling us a little bit about the mission of the International Wellbeing Institute?
Yes, so International Wellbeing Institute, or IWBI, is focused on transforming health and well-being of people globally through better performing buildings and organizations and communities. So it was developed over 10 years ago. The WELL standard is our primary mechanism through which we go about trying to drive this change. The WELL standard has evidence-based strategies around health and well-being, again, on both the building performance and organizational performance side. We increasingly have a number of ratings that kind of add to the tool set. So the first one was the health safety rating that was developed in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The performance rating, which is a subset of features really specifically focused on building level asset performance around air quality, water quality, lighting quality. And then really excitingly and relevant to what I'm talking about at REITworks this week is the WELL equity rating, which was released at the end of last year.
And picking up on that, your panel here at REITworks focused on defining DEI targets and aligning metrics with business goals. What trends are you seeing in this area?
I mean, it's been amazing, the growth in interest around DEI over the past couple of years. I've been working within the ESG space in real estate since 2015 when I did work with GRESB to create the GRESB Health and Wellbeing module. At that time, people were not really talking about the social pillar of ESG. ESG really meant primarily environmental, with governance as sort of the implementation mechanism. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, social issues were already starting to get more awareness, but then COVID-19 and critically, as Deanna Salas will talk about in our panel, the social unrest that we saw globally beginning in 2020 really drove the awareness, I think, on the financial side around the systemic risks associated with social inequity, racial inequity, and have really driven an increased focus on DEI, specifically within ESG, which is incredibly exciting.
And is there some low-hanging fruit that you think companies can sort of look to attack in this area?
Yeah, well, so for real estate companies, you've got to think about both your internal operations and your external operations. And a good way to get started is by first focusing on that internal portion. So looking at your own employee relations, looking at how your workforce is currently comprised. The WELL equity rating, the first strategy within that rating, is my favorite one, which is conducting a DEI assessment and action plan. So very similar to how you would address many environmental issues, conduct a baseline, figure out where you are, and then start to set goals and milestones that you'll achieve over time. In the first investor panel this morning, I really appreciated the comments from all of the panelists around the importance for being transparent with your investors about what your plans are, what your goals are, what your milestones are, rather than necessarily be too focused on flashy announcements that are maybe at one point in time, but instead focusing on creating those systems, processes, and protocols that are going to ensure continued success.
And you mentioned earlier sort of the momentum shift that occurred with COVID-19, but in more general terms, how have you seen the sort of the tenor of conversations around DEI and ESG evolve in recent years?
Well, we've had quite a unique ride here in the US, which when I talk to my European and Australian colleagues, they don't quite understand what it is that we're having trouble with here. So there's definitely been, I think, the political backlash that we have had in the US honestly makes us double down on core concepts, right? So regardless of what we're calling it, the actual concepts matter, and the global investor community has decided that these do matter, and they're going to continue to incorporate them into their investment decision making. And that's been long true for the environmental side, but again on the social side, and specifically when it comes to DEI, this increased awareness not only of potential risks associated with not acting that we really saw in some of the social justice movements, but then also the value creation opportunities that are associated with taking a DEI approach, in terms of additional research coming out that more diverse teams simply perform better, are more creative in their decision-making processes, are better actually at doing market analysis and understanding where are the opportunities for us to really differentiate ourselves. That comes from having a diversity of perspective, not only as it relates to, ethnic and racial income background, but also in mindset. That's one of the things I've really enjoyed about my career. My formal training is in public health, biology, public health. I've interfaced with the real estate industry for my entire career, and being able to combine those different skill sets and different theories of change that are incorporated within different sectors really does lead to greater innovation.
And finally, in your opinion, what are some of the biggest challenges, whether they're real or perceived, that organizations face when striving to create a diverse and inclusive organization?
I think one of the most common excuses that companies give is the pipeline problem, right? Like, we don't have a robust pipeline of diverse talent. I've been really encouraged by companies like Brandywine at their Schuylkill Yards development in Philadelphia, where they actually acted to address that particular issue by developing a vocational training program and really trying to diversify the unions in Philadelphia so that they can then hire diverse talent, particularly within the supply chain, within their contractors and things like that. So I think pipeline is a real challenge, but it's one that's very addressable, that companies can actually invest in solutions rather than waiting on academia or other vocational programs to solve the problem for them. The other challenge that is a real challenge is retention, and there's been a lot of discussion. It's been exciting actually to see, last year there was increased talk around attracting diverse talent. Now the conversation's really on how do you retain diverse talent, and that's the real litmus test, because that really is an indication of whether or not you've actually changed the culture internally. And that culture change is hard, but I do think it comes from it can be achieved by making sure that everyone has truly bought into the value proposition here. If everybody truly believes that a diverse workforce, or on the external side, a diverse set of tenants is going to lead to prolonged success over time, if you truly believe that, then that's going to organically lead to culture shifts and culture changes where diverse perspectives are valued. But I think too often companies skip over that really important component of making sure that everyone from top to bottom is on board with the why we're doing this.